the great the great philosophers and thinkers who have informed the liberty movement for centuries have pointed out that the best friend of big government is war.
But here you have Nikki Haley, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, almost as we speak, literally, at the UN Security Council saying, quote, "We know Assad has used chemical weapons before." It's not true. It has never been proven that he has. He may have. We do know that the rebels have used them. That has been proven.
And who would benefit? It makes no sense, even if you were totally separate from this and take no sides of this, and you were just an analyst. It doesn't make any sense for Assad under these conditions to all of a sudden use poison gases. It's zero. I think it's zero chance that he would have done
this. And this is deadly serious. And you know, the great the great philosophers and thinkers who have informed the liberty movement for centuries have pointed out that the best friend of big government is war. Tom Woods talks about that. Robert Higgs, I just posted that. That's a great speech he gives, or talk he gives to the Mises Institute, if you saw that, what is back in 2015. And he gets a little choked up talking about his relationship with Murray Rothbard and also some of the people that followed Professor Higgs, who is now retired in Mexico. And we have this continual impetus on the part of the political class to wage war on Syria. I've been up here talking about this before. We've had resolutions that we got through the 9th Congressional District Republican Committee back in the day. We tried to get it done at the state committee level. Many of them don't want to hear it. They think that if you stand up for peace, that somehow you're against the troops. And the troops are the ones that suffer the most, along with the civilian populations in those countries, from these wars of aggression. And these wars are used as an excuse to increase government power over our lives in many ways. In fact, in Professor Higgs' talk at the Mises Institute, he talks about the ratchet effect and what happened. And people think, well, they're off there defending our freedom. And, oh, wow, this is interesting. I see the reflection. So what actually happens is the amount of government control over our lives increases during war. It increases dramatically during wartime. You think back to what happened when Abraham Lincoln was president. And by the way, he was not enforcing the law when he was arresting local and state officials. Somebody posted this blankety blank meme today on Facebook. Idiots. You know, and the person calls themselves, oh, they're a conservative, you know, and what are you conserving? Certainly not liberty, certainly not peace, certainly not prosperity. Well, in addition to that, look at World War I and what Woodrow Wilson did. And if you study the history of Woodrow Wilson and World War I, they basically set the stage for World War II and the stage for the New Deal, you see. And then, of course, World War II comes along. Well, Professor Higgs has this study, and he shows what happened in terms of the number of laws and edicts that are issued by government during wars, and they skyrocket. Well, war ends, but they don't go away. I mean, some of them do, but most of them don't. And the amount of the federal budget that goes for war-making activities, the amount of our financial resources that are taken up either through debt or through taxation and through government expenditures, they never go back to where they were before. He calls that the ratchet effect. The situation in Syria is extremely serious. There are people in Washington, in the political class, in the special interest groups, and people in these foreign countries, some of which border on Syria, some of which are considered America's top allies, even though, as I'm thinking, I'm not sure that we have an actual alliance treaty with these countries that are involved in this. And they are working night and day to get rid of the Assad government. There have been plans afoot since the 70s and 80s to do this. Now, whatever any government is overseas, I say it's not up to us to change it. Anybody that tries to change it will not be using their own resources, they'll be using our resources. They'll be putting us at risk, they'll be putting our troops at risk, they'll be putting those people over there at risk. These governments may be bad, but look what comes after them. But even if the good things came after them, they have no right to do this. And if they launch a war against, and they've already started, there are troops there in Syria, there's no declaration of war. What the hell happened to Congress? What happened to the Constitution? What happened to the oath of office? These congressional cowards, these senatorial cowards, these administrative cowards put their hands on the Bible. And they take an oath. And the oath is to uphold the Constitution. They haven't passed a properly constitutionally mandated declaration of war since World War II, since 1942. Okay? Now, some of the deceivers say, oh, there's an authorization to use military force. That doesn't count. One of the elements in a declaration of war is that Congress declares a state of war now exists. Congress is not authorized to tell the president, you go ahead and decide for yourself whether there's a state of war, and if you want to get the military involved, you do that. The president is commander-in-chief, not of us, so if they say, well, you're president, no. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces when they are called into service. They have not been properly called into service. Some of them are dying. People overseas have died. The numbers of people that have died from these undeclared wars of aggression, it's a huge number. And by the way, everything they use as an excuse to say, this is why we're doing it, is wrong. It's an utter lie. They've actually been promoting, they say, well, we're against radical Islam. Oh yeah? Well, you go back and you look at what was happening during various administrations. And the information is out there. The United States government intentionally promoted radical Islam when it was relatively dormant. They promoted it, and they even said during the Eisenhower years, be sure to emphasize the holy war aspect. They thought this was the way to bring down the Soviet Union. The late and extremely great Dr. Ludwig von Mises said that socialism and communism could never succeed. There were a whole lot of reasons, not the least of which is the calculation problem. Meantime, our government is funding the World Bank, the IMF, they're giving subsidies to these countries, you see. And then on the other hand, they say, well, now we got to have a huge military budget. It's an enemy's creation industrial complex. Whether they mean it to be that or not, and some of them might, and some of them probably don't, that is the way that it works out. And you see what has happened to the Middle East. It is an absolute crime. After World War I, and of course, I mentioned Woodrow Wilson, but after World War I, when they were going to have these mandates, the Syrian people said they didn't want a British mandate or a French mandate. They wanted an American mandate because of America's history of relative non-intervention up to that point, and they had no reason at that point to distrust the Americans. They had reason to distrust the British, and you read, they got just something on the history about Lawrence of Arabia, and you've read all that, of course, and also with the French and what they had done. I guarantee you they don't feel that way now. And you look at what's happened with these groups overseas, and we have politicians, including local politicians, who will deny it. But it's a fact that the United States government, both by what they did to Iraq, it was a war crime of the highest magnitude. And in fact, I listened to the thing where Lou Rockwell interviewed Tom Woods about the book that he and Murray Polner, Tom of course is on the right, he's a libertarian, and Murray Polner's on the left, but they did We Who Dare to Say No to War, and all these speeches. And so but Lou pointed out that he had correspondence from Russell Kirk. Many people remember Russell Kirk, the great conservative leader, and Kirk told Lou Rockwell, Russell Kirk, the father of modern American conservatism, told Lou Rockwell in this letter that the first President Bush should be hung from the highest tree on the White House lawn. I am quoting Russell Kirk, according to Lou Rockwell. Why? Because what he did to the people of Iraq. The Christian civilization in Iraq is just about wiped out. There are only small remnants, okay? And it was one of the oldest Christian civilizations in the world. The terror groups, but isn't the government in Washington, D.C. a terror group when you think about it? I mean, yes. So they're
not fun anymore, Dennis.
Okay, but they're doing things to try to get civilians to change their political. And that's, George Bush said that. This has been, in fact, you can find, if you go back earlier times where U.S. government employees actually would say that. They don't say it quite that way now because of the pejorative, because they use it as a political talking point. But what they've done to the people of Iraq, remember Madeleine Albright? Madeleine Albright on television being interviewed. And she said, well, the sanctions on Iraq may have killed up to 500,000 Iraqi children. She didn't say, oh, no, it didn't. She said, it's very sad. If I have asbestos, Parrish. She said, we think the price is worth it. Can you think of a greater example of depraved moral indifference? How many more Iraqis had to die for their megalomania? They lied about it, and they knew they were lying about it. They wanted to do the same thing to the people of Iran. And by the way, I know when we had that meeting, it was very controversial, But I'll stand up here and I'll say it again. Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. Their government said we don't want nuclear weapons. They actually said they're not Islamic. The Israeli Mossad and US CIA and the entire US, this is one thing the intelligence community did agree on. Not this crap about the alleged Russian hacking. That's baloney. They haven't said that. But they did come out with a national intelligence estimate, which means and it was unanimous, every intelligence agency said they do not have a nuclear weapons program. They are signatories to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, as is the United States government. Not every government is. I'll just mention it. It's a fact. The government of Israel is not. The government of India is not, as I recall, nor Pakistan. And North Korea, I think, is not either, if I recall correctly. But anyway, that may be, okay. But as a signatory, you have the right to a civilian nuclear program. That's part of the agreement. The Shah loved it. Westinghouse and GE were giving them these reactors. The Ayatollah actually shut him down. There's a lot of stuff I don't like about the Ayatollahs that you don't like about the Ayatollahs, but they shut it down because he said he didn't want anything nuclear. Eventually, these people said, well, okay, what if we had just nuclear power? Maybe we can sell more oil for cash. And they started to do that again. But they had a right to a civilian nuclear program. Another thing about that treaty is when you sign it, you bind yourself to not interfering with another signatory's civilian nuclear program. And read the work done by Gareth Porter. You can read Sheldon Richman. You can read David Stockman. They've all talked about this. It's not like it's a secret. Although you won't hear it on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC most likely. I could be wrong that maybe somebody brought this up, but I doubt it. Maybe just Napolitano did one time. I don't know. But anyway, but the United States government did interfere with that in clear violation of the treaty. Okay, now, here's the thing. For everything that's wrong with the Iranian government, and I'm sure there's plenty. I mean, they had there's stuff over there that's bad. But they're much better for the Christian people than the Saudi government. And the Saudis are definitely involved, along with other governments in the Middle East, including what you might be surprised to hear about, but they are involved in pushing their Wahhabism.
Yeah, radical Islam.
That is the radical Islam. Yes, you're right, Scott. That's the great Scott Tillman over there, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause for Scott, who came up with the key point here, the money quote, yes. Okay, so at the United States government, and you can read this, a great story by Dan Sanchez, Playing with Wahhabist Fire. But he talks in there about just how horrible this was for the Saudi royal family to work with this guy, Ibn Wahhab, I guess was his name or whatever, back in the 1700s. And then the British government and the American government, and it's been a nightmare ever since. And then, of course, who else does the United States government pal up with over there that I can mention that wouldn't be politically controversial, if it pleased the crown? Turkey, with the Turkish government. With the Turks and the Saudis, among other countries, including other neighbors of Syria, are trying to get rid of the Syrian government. They want to get rid of the Iranians. It's a rotten deal every way around. If they were to succeed at this in Damascus, it would be horrific for all the minority groups in Syria, including the remaining Syrian Christians. And in fact, people have pointed out, including Robert Fisk, who's a great writer for The Independent, he said, it was ironic, back in 2015, he said, here we are on the 100th anniversary of the genocide that the Turks launched against the Armenians and other Christians and other groups, okay, in World War I, and we have the same thing happening over again. In fact, he actually flew in to Dearborn. I was at and Paul, you were there, right? Yeah, you and I went to that. That's right. So he was there, and also, who's the actor? He was on Law and Order, the Armenian guy, he did the radio thing. Well, you know what I'm talking about. You remember that. He played one of the lieutenants or something on there, or whatever.
Was it Bogosian?
Yeah, Bogosian, right? Is that, yeah, okay. So he was there too. But Robert Fisk said, and he said, the same thing is happening all over again, and in many cases, it's the same types of groups and the same governments that are behind it. But it also includes the United States government and certain politically sacrosanct other governments because they want to get rid of the Assads. And this is bad for the people of Syria. If these people get in there and you're worried about, people that have these wild radical Islamists and are mean to other Muslims who don't share their horrible ideology and terrible to the Christians, I mean, it's just awful. And when this sort of thing happens, as Hicks talked about, there's the financial aspects, but also look at things like the National Defense Authorization Act, not just the financial part of it, but the NDAA, where they have sections 1021 and 1022 from the 2012 one that Obama signed on New Year's Eve. The only reason I'm going by this, it's very important, but also the pizza isn't here yet. I promise when the pizza gets here, I'll wrap it up. So then you can then eat if I haven't ruined your appetite for you. But the NDAA of 2012 has in there, it codified the ability legalized. It's against the Constitution, of course, and it's against our natural rights. But for the President of the United States to declare somebody a terrorist and to disappear that person, they tried to deny it, but it's true. Then some people say, oh yeah, but if you're an American citizen, the Bill of Rights doesn't apply to American citizens. The Bill of Rights is a bill of prohibitions against the United States government from doing something to anybody.
Right.
And if it was only for citizens, let me just point this out to you. They could take away your citizenship and then say, well, sorry, you're not protected. And again, you saw that clean-shaven guy talking there earlier, if you got here early, that John was showing that video, talking about American federalism. It's not top-down. It's not even one nation. If you're wondering why we didn't recite the Pledge of Submission and wipe our feet rhetorically on the graves of Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry and Thomas Paine and those great men of that era and those Revolutionary War veterans. It's a federal union of states. It was originally a confederation, okay? But it's nation states that came together in a union, not one country, not one nation state. A collection of nation states. That's what was established, and that's what was ratified during the ratifying conventions, and a couple of states I think had votes, but just within each individual state. So the reason I'm talking about this is it's very important right now. You know, Judge Napolitano has a thing, he says, seldom in the history of the world does the survival of freedom depend on one generation. And as a judge says, ladies and gentlemen, this is that time. We are that generation. So I say, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to let the politicians and the political parties and the special interest groups continue to rob us, continue to spy on us, continue to put lives at risk and get people killed for their megalomania, for their political power? Or are we going to stand up and say, it's over, it's done? I ask you what you will do. I ask you to join with us, because I think there is no mission that is more important than that today on a political, educational, intellectual, and spiritual level. Thank you.
Here, 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 here.